So this is A3, as we normally broadsheet, and that's tabloid. Yes, it is. No, that's tabloid. I don't know. Don't ask me any questions. Right. So a story, depending on what it is and where it is in the paper, we'll talk about your lead. So for your lead story, this is a bit of odd. This is a really traditional page, and this is your lead story, which is your most important story. And a lead would never be more than about 400 words long, because I was taught a million years ago that no one reads further than 400 words in a news story, and they don't. You'd find yourself reading the first bit because you get all the really important information, and then you find out those other little bits. But generally people stop reading about here, and that's just something that people do. So you need to, that's why we use the inverted pyramid to make sure that. And then a small story of about 250 words. A really good story is about 250 words long, so it doesn't have to be really, really long. And once you start writing, you realise actually 250 words isn't that many. You know, it doesn't actually take you that long if you've really done your homework and you ask the questions properly and you think about it on your way home and you yarn to your photographer about it. You just get back and fire it all out and maybe go and have a cup of coffee, come back, have a bit of a read, a bit of a shake up, spell check, because spelling is so important. But a feature can be 1,000 words, 2,000 words. It's a really, really awesome feature about something that's really important. And you'll find that people will read that because you're using that language that really catches your reader and really keeps them sort of moving along and wanting to find out what happens in the end, because you don't use that traditional structure. You would use different techniques to ride people through the story. And the way that it's written, people would be aware that there'd be more information for them waiting to the end. So, you know, like when you end a story, you don't want to be like, and then I woke up, because it's sort of like, oh, that's a stupid ending, isn't it? So, you know, you've got to round that out and make it have a beginning and an end. Yeah. Okay, so we'll talk now. So once you get your story and you're all written, and you've spelled it properly, because that's hugely important, and you've made it sound really good, what you need to do actually is, this is a really awesome tip, is you write your story, you get it where you think it's pretty good, and then go away into a quiet place where it's just you and read it out loud to yourself. And you feel like a bit of a weirdo, but that's where you find that you've repeated the same word 4 times, or that you've missed a word out, or that it doesn't actually make any sense to you. And then you think, oh, so you go back and you fix those mistakes, and that's one of the most important things to do, is to read it out loud, even if it's just whispering it out loud.
I make them get out Mr. Editor. Show Sarah Mr. Editor. Mr. Editor has to point to every single word as they read it out loud. So they're reading what they have written, not what they think they have written.
You'll be surprised at how many times. These are 2 different things, this one and this one. So don't miss it. Okay, so when we talk about making a newspaper look beautiful, of course everything is a lot more online now, and people do go online to find their news, and the way that an online page is put together is completely different. But we'll talk traditional newspapers for the sake of old-fashioned, old school. Right, so this is the traditional broadsheet newspaper. So a broadsheet is a big paper, you know, big mummy-daddy paper that you spread out on the kitchen table and read your breakfast with. And a tabloid are the smaller community papers, and that's half the size, and they were invented so that people could read them easily on public transport and put them in the back, whatever. Okay, so what we have up here is what we call the masthead, and that's the name of the publication. So it's the Southland Times, or it's the Manawatu Standard, or the Otago Daily Times. Underneath here we have, oh my goodness, I can't remember what they're called. We'll call them things and stuff. But what these things do is they advertise what's going on inside, because skyboxes, that's what they're called. These are the skyboxes, so they tell the person, the casual reader, who is someone that's just walked into a shop and sees that folded over on the counter of the dairy, they think, oh yep, there's this cool picture, I might want to read about that. Oh yep, look, there's that interesting story there. Oh yep, I get to read about a car, and that's interesting to me. Or, oh look, it's this tax, which people just automatically read that, don't they? So these things are just important, and they refer, we call them briefers, but they refer you to where you need to go in the paper, so you can just go and flip back and find that straight away. So what we use in traditional pagination, how's that for a word, is what we call the backwards S. So what you do is you pretend that you trace a big backwards S on the page, and what that backwards S represents is actually, they've done studies, is that how a human eye will move along a page of text. So what we do is we look here, and then we'll look here, and then we'll kind of look there, and then our eye skids off that way. So what you need to do is manipulate the information you've got on the page to make sure you're catching their eye all the time and that they're getting the information they need. So this is where we put the most important story, okay, with this big bold type on the header line so that people really know what we're talking about. Then we put something cool for people to look at for their reward for reading the story about nitrates. They get to look at this. I actually saw this in China. I'm very lucky.
Ooh.
It's really menacing if you stand up where the man is. It's really menacing. And I would be worth every penny that Michael has been doing. Yeah. So then we come through here and we'd read perhaps a story as well on our way down. And then this part of the newspaper is called the Solus, and it's the ad that is always sold because it's a definite. Everybody looks at this part where they turn the page. So everyone will see what's down here. So the Solus is there. Now this is a community paper, so it's smaller, it's not a broadsheet, and they have a different way of laying their paper out because they have a different job in the community. A newspaper is there to tell you immediate news that's really important to you, so as I said before, so you can help make your decisions to help form your opinions in your day. Whereas a community newspaper expects to sit on the kitchen table or on the bench or maybe on the coffee table for a few days before people get around to reading it. So we call this like a chocolate box. It's got a really pretty picture of Tom Cruise, which I thought was reaching there to find the link to local there, but anyway, I'm not the editor there. But there's a picture of Tom Cruise, so you're automatically going to look at it, because when do you see a paper from Chicago with a picture of Tom Cruise in the front? Ever. Like, big star. So you think, oh my goodness, is he coming here? Is he already here? Am I Tom Cruise? Do I not know this? And then we have our skyboxes, but we run them down the side, and that's just all design and making it look beautiful. But that's telling you what's inside. There's your masthead there, and there's your information. Well, that's a different story actually. So that's, I've done this because it's a bit confusing. I would just so you can't see. Let's have a look on the inside. Right, this is your inside page of a community newspaper. This is what we call the flannel panel. It's a colloquial term, I don't think it actually means anything, but this is all the information that you need. The broadsheet has this as well. This is all the information people need to know who works for the paper, how they can ring and complain or say, hey, that was an awesome story, I'm so proud. Do you know how often that happens? Never, ever happens. People only ring you when they hate you. And we've got smaller stories. So the importance of stories. Now, what are we talking about when we talk about importance of stories? Do you guys get what we're talking about here? Okay, on the front of the paper, the broadsheet, we'll go back here in a second. So we've got our important job. Now this is obviously an important story because we're talking about TY and redundancies, and that's something that's really going to affect every single person living in Southland. So that's a super important story. And this is what we call probably a soft news story. So you, like I said before, we reward people for reading a hard story by giving them something nice. And also so it's not so depressing. First thing in the morning and you think, oh, redundancy, doom and gloom, everything's terrible. And then you're like, oh, look at that nice lady. And she's got a flag and there's children. And it kind of makes you feel a bit better about everything before you launch into the next page. So it goes, most important stories are on page 1. And then your second most important stories are on page 2. Page 3. Do you know why? Because when you're sitting reading the paper, you read page 1, and then where do you look? Page 3. And then maybe you'll look at page 2. We bury things on page 2, because sometimes it's a page that people don't bother with. Then page 5, and then run a paper. Oh, but your back page is really important too. Often people will read the first page, pop to the back page. Some people flip backwards, and it's just difficult to deal with those people. I just don't know what to say about them. Yes?
Which page is the opinions page?
The opinions page moves around in the Southland Times about 5, 7, but it's one of the more read papers, and so that, and that's what, so now I'll start. Let's talk about something else. What did I have for breakfast? I had yoga. It was very nice.
Odd numbers, though. No.
What says how many?
Yes, what says how many pages there are in a paper? It's because of what? Does anyone know?
Where does the money come from?
It's money making machines.
Ads.
The advertising. So your paper is only as big as the advertising that's in your paper. So you don't just have pages full of just your stories, which reporters and photographers think that sounds like an awesome idea. But no,
It's It's not that the reporters have been lazy one particular day.
No, not at all. It's because there's not been enough ads sold. So a page like this has got, okay, that's good because you don't want, we aim for a 40-60, which is 60% editorial content and 40% ads. But in community papers, the ad ratio is higher, and in the boys' shed it's generally lower. So, but yeah. So when you lay out your paper, it's something that, think about. You may not have ads, but sometimes it's nice to pretend that there were because it gives you're able to have that structure. So just think that you're playing Tetris when you make your pages. Make everything look nice and even, and have a really good look and think, when I look at this, does that make my eye feel calm and like it just moves through the page, or does it make me think, because that's not what you want. You need to guide your reader, hold their hand and take them through the experience of reading the paper. I don't know where all that comes from. It's true though. Any questions? Yeah? It doesn't have to be a good question just because I'm a reporter, because I don't answer a good question.
Do you work for the Southland Times?
I did work for the Southland Times. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
Maddie?
Yes.
Have you worked for any other community sort of papers?
Just for the Southland Times, and then I worked for the Invercargill Eye.
Okay. We've done a wee bit on note taking and dictation versus notes. When do you use dictation? When do you do it verbatim?
Everything that people say someone says in the newspaper should have been said, and if it hasn't, you've broken the law. So you need to have absolutely concrete notes that you can take to court. And I'm not saying, well, obviously not you guys, but people that work in newspapers, you can be taken to court for saying that someone said something when they say they didn't. So you need to have notes. So your notebook needs to be filled with exactly what happened during the interview. But what I would do is I would often use both kinds of technology. So I'd use old school, pencil and paper, because pencil works on the rain, pens don't.
Always have a pencil.
Always have a pencil. Pencil in your notebook, and also I'd have the voice recorder on because that's irrefutable. You can't say that you didn't say that if you're on the voice recorder. But as I said before, you can't trust that, so you need to have both forms of notes. And don't take exhaustive notes, but when people are saying something and you kind of know they're saying something really interesting, you need to write all that down. And you can ask people to repeat themselves because people want to be quoted correctly, so you can say, you're going to have to say that again. But just say, don't say, I wasn't listening, because that's terrible. You just say, you said it a bit quickly, or you're a bit lispy.
My shorthand's not fast.
My shorthand's not fast enough. That wasn't me. Yes?
What seems to be a paper for you to work for? Was it
Let me introduce you, Mackenzie Fellow.
Yes, I did.
Before he sets you up.
That's right. Well, I did different work for the Southland Times, really, because I was a sub-editor, so I was in charge of making sure the pages looked awesome, which is why I have all my happy ideas about pages, and making sure other people's work sounded better. And then I wrote for the Express, but for the Eye, but I did a column for the Times. I think probably working for the Times would be a bit more fun because you get a lot more variety and you've got a buddy to work with, whereas on the Eye, I've just worked on my own and it did get a bit lonely, and there was a lot of pressure because I had to fill every inch of that paper every week, whereas with the Southland Times there's lots of people working there. So
with the Eye, Sarah wrote all the stories and took the photos as well, so it was pretty every week to come up with all of that.
So it was a hard job.
So it was your newspaper,
That was
really.
my baby.
Yeah.
Because I was there from the very beginning as well.
She's
mine. Because that's what you have to do. You have to love your publication. You love it. You breathe it. Because when you're a reporter, you're always a reporter. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you need to tell your friends and family, and seriously you should do this, I would say the magic word, and they would say, this is off the record. Because if someone says something when you're just hanging out and they say something really cool, in the back of your mind you're thinking, oh, that's an awesome story. Sometimes it's terrible things, you think, oh no, this is going to be a really good story. So, yeah, you never not at work. Yes?
Is shorthand very hard?
Shorthand is unbelievably hard. For me,